In every book that we read, in every movie that we watch, what keeps us hooked in the storyline is the character development. We're following these characters that don't have simple lives. Humanity is messy. We get to observe humanity in its brokenness, the heartbreak, the betrayal, the abuse, the trauma, the things that led to tragic decisions. And if the author or the director is a good storyteller, we see the person's story unfold as the scenes or chapters continue. What led them up to this moment? The father who carried generational pain that beats the son. The little boy that was exposed to sexuality way too soon, that led him to patterns and cycles of destructive behavior that one day made his wife not trust him. The secret rage and anger hidden in a person's heart that leads them to murder. The woman who sells herself on the streets because she was shown and taught, you are not worth anything. Within every story, there is a story. In fact, human nature is to draw sudden conclusions based upon the surface, upon what we perceive about a situation or a person. Yet there is one who never operates from a place of not understanding. Love himself. We're starting off the next 12-week series with this question. What is your story within the story? The story within the story means what your heart experienced within what happened. There was a circumstance or a situation that you had to endure possibly multiple times. And there was a voice behind that situation that whispered to you something about who you are, who God is, and how you perceive the world. No matter what your story is, I think the deepest pain beneath our experiences was broken trust. And every unhealed wound eventually wounds others. Every person's life has different chapters, different characters, different circumstances. But beneath them all is one question. Can I trust? Can I trust people? Can I trust myself? Can I trust God? Can I trust love? And perhaps the greatest story in the Word of God is that God never asks us to manufacture trust. He reveals himself as trustworthy. It's the story of a God who continually shows us how trustworthy he is until trust can grow again. You see, the God of love did not take our failure and our mistake in the garden and say, well, you screwed up now. Right then and there, he immediately developed a plan of restoration and redemption so that he would not have to be apart from us and we would not need to be apart from him. So beneath every story that taught your heart not to trust, that taught your heart this isn't safe, that love isn't safe, there is another story. One where love has never stopped being faithful. One where love has never turned their back on you. If trust is the fabric of life, then healing is not simply learning how to feel better. Healing is allowing love to patiently weave back together what fear, betrayal, and brokenness tore apart. Trust is like the suspension of the moon. You are trusting that something larger than that moon is holding it up. And instead of you trying to desperately uphold your own life, you can trust in the gravity that is stronger than yourself. Many of you have been taught that this, the Word of God, is a book of rules, a book of demands of how you are to live your life, or God will be displeased with you. And if God is love, then love must be earned or kept in your own striving or performance. Have you ever been told something about someone from an individual's perception of how they acted or who they are? I'm not being critical of the church here, but a lot of times the spirit of religion can paint God and God's heart into something that we don't see in his story. So in the next 12 weeks, whenever I bring this up, I want you to see it as his story of love for you and I. One of the deepest questions of the human heart is, who sees me? Psalm chapter 139 starts off with us recognizing that we are seen. And not only that someone sees us, but he sees the story within the story. Verse 1 says, "O Lord, you have searched me and you have thoroughly known me." It does not begin with, "Lord, you know what I've done." It begins with, "You know me." It goes on to say, "You have searched me." And the Hebrew word here carries the idea of examining thoroughly, exploring, and searching deeply. Not like a detective trying to catch someone, but more like a master craftsman who understands every detail of what he has made, or like a physician who searches in order to heal. God isn't searching us because he's lacking information. He's revealing his heart, that nothing is hidden from him. Every joy, every fear, every wound, every unanswered question, every hidden motive, every forgotten memory, he knows it all. The psalm continues to say, "And you have known me." In Hebrew thought, to know someone is relational. It is far more deeper than possessing facts. You know facts about celebrities, but you don't know them personally. God does not merely know your biography. He knows your heart. He knows why you laughed, why you cried, why you became quiet, why you withdrew, why certain words affected you more than others. He knows the hidden story beneath the visible story. But underneath every visible story is another story. The story of why we struggle to trust, why certain losses hurt so deeply, why we long for belonging, why certain moments changed us forever, how God quietly met us when no one else saw. This is the story within the story. And Psalm 139 opens by saying, there is someone who already knows that story. Before you ever tell him, before anyone believes you, before anyone understands you, love knows. He knows. David does not say, "Lord, I searched myself and I've figured everything out." He says, "You have searched me." That's important because many of us spend years trying to understand ourselves, and sometimes we become trapped in self-analysis. But David begins with God's knowledge of him instead of his own, almost as if he's saying, before I understand myself, you already do. That is incredibly freeing. And that is where we are beginning this next 12-week series. God already knows. There is one who has been in your story all along. Love himself. And then the psalm continues, "You know when I sit down and when I rise up, you discern my thoughts from afar." Notice how personal this is. God isn't merely interested in life's major events. He notices ordinary moments, sitting, standing, walking, thinking. Nothing is beneath his attention. If he knows when you sit down, then surely he knows the weight that you carry when you sit alone. If he knows when you rise, surely he knows and understands what you stand up to face. Then comes one of my favorite verses. "Before a word is on my tongue, behold, Lord, you know it altogether." He knows what we are trying to say. And sometimes what we're trying to say doesn't have words yet. I think anyone who has sat in silence before God understands this. Sometimes our prayers begin before our sentences ever do. Imagine reading only the dialogue in a novel. You would know what everyone said, but you wouldn't know what they were thinking. You wouldn't know what happened in chapter 2 that explains chapter 12. You wouldn't know the hidden grief that explains someone's reaction. But God reads the whole book, every page, every chapter. And unlike us, he never loses the thread. He sees the beginning, the middle, and the end without confusing any of the chapters. And what's even more beautiful is that later in Psalm 139, David says that God knew him even while he was being formed in secret. Before anyone else knew your story, God did. He knows the chapters that existed before anyone else knew your name. And I wonder if that is one of the deepest invitations of Psalm 139. It isn't simply saying God knows everything. It is saying there is one person who has never misunderstood your story. People may know your actions, but not your motives. They may know your decisions, but not your tears. They may know your smile, but not your prayers. They may know the chapter that you are currently in, but not the chapters that came before. But the Lord, love himself, has searched you and knows you completely. And here is what moves me the most. David does not respond to the knowledge with fear. He responds with adoration, because the one who knows David completely is also the one who loves him faithfully. That, perhaps, is the greatest comfort of the story within the story. The author of your life has never confused a single page, never overlooked a hidden chapter, and never stopped reading with compassion. There are circumstances that happened in your life as a result of the wounds and the brokenness of other people's choices. Choices that did not derive from love himself, but from the brokenness in humanity. Love is inviting you back home, not to erase all of the chapters and the heartache and the pages that came and led up to this point, but to give you a revelation of your story within the story that you've lived, and to discover that love really never left you all along. Welcome home.